Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Deirdre, and I am from WonderLab. I nearly put my apron on backwards there. I am joined by Nell, also from WonderLab.
Morning.
Right. And I'm going to hand things over to you, Nell.
And so we are going to talk today about something called a sundial. Now, I am sure that a lot of you probably have a clock in your house. Does anybody out there have a clock in their house? Maybe even in the room you're in right now? I see a lot of hands raised, yes. So clocks, of course, are used to tell time. But there was a long time when there wasn't a clock. There wasn't something like that that told time. So they had to use a different thing to tell the time, and that was a sundial. And what the sundial does is it sort of measures where the sun is and gives you an approximation or an estimate of what time it is. I see someone in the comments saying they have a sundial, which is great. Yes, there are actually a lot of them. And even if you see one, you might not know that's what it is, but there are some, even in Bloomington where we are at certain locations. So sundials are one of those great tools that we have that we can use to tell the time. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures that I have of some sundials. So this is one example of a sundial, and this is a pretty fancy sundial. It looks like it might be made out of copper and stone. Someone in the comments is saying that there's one at the library. And I believe that is right. That's a really great observation.
Yeah.
I can tell that we have someone here who really likes to read then, if you've noticed the one that's at the library.
Yes, that's true.
But yes, so this is one example of what a sundial looks like. And this is a pretty fancy sundial. It would be sort of hard to make one of these at home because it requires a lot of different parts that we might not all have access to right now, and it looks pretty heavy. So I think it would be hard to work on at home. Here's another example of a sundial, and this one is a little more abstract. So you might not know if you saw it that that's what it was, that it's a sundial. But it is there to help us tell time. So today we are going to talk a little bit about how you can make a sundial at home that you can then use to tell the time. And it's an activity that has a couple of different parts. So there's a part that's the sort of setup part, and then there's a part that requires a little bit of patience. And it requires you to sort of check on things a couple of times. What we are going to do first is I'm going to show you what you need for this activity. And it's really simple. All you need is a paper plate like the one I have here, a sharp pencil, or you could use a straw or something like that. You need a marker, and you need a ruler. And I chose this activity of making a sundial because these are things that a lot of us already have around the house. So I had these things at my house, and so it was easy for me to get them together and put this activity together. And the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a caregiver to help you with some of this and to make sure that your caregiver is okay with you taking and using some of these different pieces like this plate. And the first part you might need a little bit of help from a caregiver with. The first thing you need to do, you are going to measure your plate. You see I've already got the start of mine on here, but you'll measure across the plate in both directions. So you want to know what the diameter of that circle is, which is a big word, I know, but that just means how far across. So that's what I did. I measured across from sort of side to side, saw how far across it was. And then what I did is I took, and this is something you're going to need, or you should ask a caregiver for some help. I took a pin, or you can use a solar needle or a sewing needle, or you can use a push pin. You're going to make a little hole right in the center. You can see I've got a hole here. But the reason you want to use a pin for that is because it's just going to help the pencil in a little bit, because I have a very thick paper plate, so it took a little extra work If you had a thinner paper plate, you might be able to get it through with just the pencil. But then I took my pencil and I just stuck it in like that. Now it's just straight in the middle, so that's what you want to make sure you're right in the middle. I've got my pencil here, and one thing you're going to need to do then is going to involve a tool called a compass. And the nice thing about the compass, and the compass is something that can tell you what direction you're facing, so it can tell you where north and south and east and west are. And the nice thing is that a lot of phones have a compass on them. My phone has a compass on it, so I was able to figure that out. And you want to, when you go outside and put your sundial where it's going to be, you want to make sure your pencil is tilted a little bit towards, you want to make sure that your pencil is tilted towards north if you're in the northern hemisphere. So I think most of us will be. You'll want to make sure your pencil is tilted towards north. So right now for me, north is that way. It's a little funny because we're on camera, but so I've got my pencil sort of tilted that way. And when I go outside, I'm going to have to probably tilt it a little bit differently because I'll be facing in a little bit of a different direction. But now this is the part that's going to take a little bit of patience. So you can start this whenever you want. Some people will say that it's better to start a little earlier in the day because then you can do it all in one day. But you're going to go outside and you're going to find some place to put your sundial where it's going to get lots of sun. And I didn't do that with mine yet because I wanted to show it all to you, what I was working on. But when I do that, I'm going to go out, and what you're going to do is make sure that your pencil is facing that direction, that north, tilted a little bit that way. And then something's going to happen. And that's going to be that there's going to be a shadow that shows up of the pencil. And when that happens, depending on what hour it is, so this is something you want to do every hour on the hour. So like I would have done it at 9 o'clock this morning had I not been meeting with all of you. And then I can do it at 10 o'clock and then 11 o'clock. So it's something that you'll have to come back and keep doing all day, but you'll put your sundial in the same place. You'll leave it in that same place so that you're getting an accurate measurement of what time it is. So when that happens, I'm going to start mine at noon today because that is when I have some time to go out and get mine started. You are going to take your marker again and your ruler. And I just showed you that I drew a straight line up to the side of my plate and then put the time. So I'm going to start mine at 12 o'clock today at noon. And what I'll do is I will rotate my plate. So I'll turn it until it is meeting, until that line is where that shadow is. And that means that's what time it is. And then every hour on the hour, I'll come back and I'll have my marker and I will have my ruler, and you will see that the shadow will have moved as the sun moves across the sky.
Nell, I have some pictures of that happening if you would like me to show those.
Yes,
okay.
please.
And I wanted to acknowledge that somebody said they don't have sun in Chicago today. Right. We're not going to have that nice full sun every day. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is. But you can make a sundial and then save it for a day when you do have some sun. So I will, I also made a sundial. Nell and I talked earlier in the week. And as Nell said, there's so many ways to make them. You can even make them with your body. And I like art as much as I like science. So I sort of decorated my sundial. And as you can see, there are some lines on it. And I have some pictures of it out in the sun with the shadow moving across it. So first I wanted to mention the round part. So in mine, it's a cardboard circle that I cut out. In Nell's, it's the paper plate. That's actually called the dial. And then this piece, and Nell used a pencil. You could have your body outside and you go to the same spot every hour and stand in it, and your body could act like this. And I cut a triangle, but this piece is called the gnomon, and it's spelled with a silent G. So that's, and you say that gnomon, and that's what that's called, okay? And so just like Nell pointed her pencil toward the north, where I'm sitting right now, north is directly behind me. I would put my sundial like this so that the point of my gnomon is facing north. And before I show you the pictures, I'll show you the pictures first, and then I'll show you exactly what's happening. So real quickly, I made mine by using a different kind of compass. and I measured about 3 inches across, and then I used that measurement to trace a circle. And then I just cut out a triangle for my gnomon, and I glued it in place. And then I painted it and decorated it with a face. And then I went out in the sun. And if you look inside the green squiggly circle I have made on the sundial, you will see where the shadow is cast. And you can see that out there I have my ruler and my pencil ready. I put this on the edge of my deck where it's nice and sunny, and I caught that first shadow. And that one was at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'll show those closer. And I had a little trouble. This is such light cardboard, and you can see I held it down with some rocks, but I would bump it each time I made my line on it. So I would work hard to get it lined up again. There's just an example of the compass I used, made sure we were pointing north. And then here, I put in 2 green arrows. You can see that first line is the one I made in the first picture. We'll go back to that. So in the next picture, I have an arrow pointing to that shadow line right there. And then now my shadow line is right here. And that is where I made my last line from the shadow. And then, okay, I didn't put another picture in. We'll wait on that. I marked mine at 9, 10, and 11, noon or midnight. 12 o'clock would be in the center here. And then I had 1 o'clock. And then I got very busy and I was unable to keep going outside and marking it every hour. So that just gives you an idea of a marking. And it's just like how the hands on a clock move around a clock. As you can see, my markings, while not perfectly spaced, line up pretty similarly with the hour markings on a clock. And so for the person who said they don't have sun in Chicago, if you wanted to make your sundial a longer art project and take some time decorating it or painting it, you can do that. And that gives you a little more to do with it until you have a nice sunny day. So what is happening with this? Well, we have the sun. I brought an example of the sun here, okay? And we have the earth. And so we have the sun shining and the earth is doing 2 things. It's orbiting around the sun, but that's not why the shadows change on the sundial. The earth is also on its axis. You can almost imagine like I'm gonna put my sun down here for a minute, like it's mounted on a stick or something, an imaginary stick, and it's turning, rotating on that axis, okay? And so as it's doing that, as that earth is rotating on its axis, the shadow that the sun is casting on the earth changes and changes throughout the day. And so before we had the kind of clocks we have now, and many of us don't even look at what an old clock faces anymore. We just look at digital readings on watches and phones. But before we had those clocks, people had a pretty good way of telling the time of day by watching what we call the movement of the sun. It's really the movement of the earth and what we see in relation to the sun. And they could know what time of day it was as long as they knew which direction north was. Yeah. So that's just a little more information and another version of a sundial. As I said, you can be the gnomon of a sundial too. If you go outside and you stand in a spot and you either use some sidewalk chalk and color that spot so you stand in the exact same spot, or even put a little bit of tape down or something and have somebody else, when you stand, mark where your shadows cast, go out to that exact same spot, and you have to be facing north every hour, and you will see your shadow move just like the hands of a clock. So if you have some space and some time and some sidewalk chalk, that would be a really fun project for you to do. So that's another way to make a sundial, what we would call an impermanent sundial, but a pretty fun way to do it. And you yourself can say, I am the gnomon. I'm being the gnomon of the sundial. So
Yes.
those are a few ways. I will hand it back to you, Nell. Sorry.
You can also make a sundial with a stick, a tall stick, pretty
There you
straight
go.
stick, and some rocks, which is another great way to use some things that you might be able to find outside right now. And someone in the comments said that gnomon is ancient Greek for indicator, which I didn't even know. But that is a really interesting fact, and I am so glad that you shared that with us, because now we all know that, and that's a fun little fun fact that we can bring out and talk about with people. So I am so glad that I was able to learn something from you about what the word gnomon means.
Yes,
Someone
thank you.
else asked, will the locations of the hour marks on the sundial change from month to month and season to season? And I answered that in the comments, but I'll also answer it out loud that no, they won't change, because the sundial is measuring the location of the sun sort of as it relates to where the earth is, not the altitude of the sun, or sort of how far or close away the sun is. So the location, the sun doesn't change. So the marks won't change, which is why sundials work year round, and you don't have to make a new one every season,
Right.
which would take a lot of time to make a new sundial for every single season of the year. So we will also post some basic directions on Facebook and some photos. And if you decide to go ahead and do this activity, we would love it if you would share those with us on our Facebook page so that we can see all of the creative things you have done with sundials.
All right, I'll let you sign off now.
We will see you at our next session. Feel free to join us this afternoon or tomorrow morning for some more science and stories and fun.